Good evening, everyone, sir. Uh, so this is our 36th issue. Sir, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes. Good evening,
Sir.
everyone. Yes.
Good evening, sir. So, sir, this is our 36th issue of our Environmental and Occupational Health DigiConnect webinar during this Corona times. And before we start, our guest faculty is Dr. Sudhir Rawal. He is Medical Director and Chief of Urogenital and Oncology at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute, New Delhi. So I would request our President, Dr. Gajen Kumar, sir, to give the welcome address.
Good evening, friends. Today again we are joining for our 36th issue of our web series academic activities. And today I welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Sudhir Rawal, as well as I welcome all other participants. And Dr. Rawal shall be speaking on prostate and urinary bladder cancers. So with these few words, I again welcome you all and hand over to Dr. Sandeep for further deliberations.
Thank you, President sir. So today, Dr. Sudhir Rawal sir, we welcome you for this our DigiConnect webinar series. This is the 36th issue of our this environmental and occupational health DigiConnect webinar. So for introduction to all the participants, so this is the Indian Association of Occupational Health. We are all industrial physicians, occupational physicians, and public health physicians from across India. And we are a association which is spread in almost many states in India. And we during this COVID times, we have been quite like we wanted to connect with everyone, so we started this DigiConnect platform, and our even our all other branches, they are also conducting programs almost on a periodical basis, just to connect with everyone and share the experience. For introduction to all the participants, Dr. Sudhir Rawal is the Medical Director and Chief of Genitourinary Oncology Services at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute, New Delhi. I have a long association with Dr. Sudhir Rawal for last, I think, 30 years, sir. And the topic for today's deliberation by him will be the management of cancer of the urinary bladder and the prostate. To introduce, Dr. Sudhir Rawal is one of the leading urogenital surgeons in India with a special interest in robotic surgery, and he is having more than 30 years of experience in genitourinary oncosurgery, and he routinely performs procedures such as radical prostatectomy, radical cystectomy, radical hysterectomy, retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, and complex urinary diversion like continent pouch and neobladder. He is the first Urogyne surgical oncologist of North India and heading the department since the inception of the institute. He did his first open retropubic radical prostatectomy in private sector in India. Besides this, he has done maximum number of radical prostatectomies, radical cystoprostatectomies, neobladder, robotic video endoscopic inguinal lymphadenectomy, and robotic retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. To his achievement in his professional journey, he is the first surgeon in India to perform perineal radical prostatectomy, first surgeon in the world to perform mini-lap radical cystoprostatectomy, and the first surgeon in Asia Pacific to perform more than 1,000 robotic surgeries in a short period of 4 years. He is credited with the maximum number of robotic video endoscopic inguinal lymphadenectomy in the world, and credited with the start of multiple pioneer works in the field of genital oncology, and has trained many doctors in this field at the global level. Appreciation Award, Leopride Tipo Prostate Cancer Update. He has received National Convener Urology. He is National Convener for Uro-Oncology, Urological Society of India, and National Faculty for Ad Board meeting on Sunitib in Zhengzhou, China, and Best Paper Award at RGCon 2009 at 8th International Conference. So, Dr. Sudhir Rawal is a great learned faculty, and we are fortunate enough to have him for this deliberation, sir. And why we chose this topic is very important, because bladder cancer is very important for our industrial physicians also, because many of the occupational exposures like aniline dyes and many amines, they are causing this bladder cancers. And even the nutritional dietary factors are also very important in case of bladder cancer. And there are many occupations which are reported to be associated with an increased risk of bladder cancer, including the auto workers, painters, truck drivers, drill press operators, leather workers, metal machiners, and those that involve organic chemicals such as dry cleaners, paper manufacturers, rope and twine makers, even the barbers, dental technicians, beauticians, physicians. So it is a more or less a lot of occupational exposures are there for this bladder cancer. So we would like to learn from you about this bladder cancer, urinary bladder cancer, and next will be the sir, some you can throw some light on the management of the prostatic cancer, because with the increase in age, this prostate cancer is also on rise, and now in our executive health checkups also we are now routinely above 40 years of age we are asking for PSA, and many of the people they are getting detected with raised PSA levels. So what is the roadmap for them for the management of this prostatic problems? So Dr. Rawal sir, floor is yours. You can share your screen and
Yeah,
start the.
thank you, Sandeep. It's a great opportunity to be with you guys. This is a bit different forum, but it's interesting to interact with you guys because I keep on speaking a lot in urology circle, but speaking to another specialty and especially occupational physician is a really great opportunity, and I'm thankful to Sandeep, to whom I know since 1995, rather, not 6. I joined Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute. In 95, we were together in Dharamshala Hospital. And I even arranged a residency for him in CMC Vellore, which he could not get because of his some problem. But since then, we are in connection, and we are sharing many time uh, conferences, and he keeps sending patients for patient care. I'm really grateful to Sandeep and all of you to be here on Saturday night. The topic which Sandeep has asked me is to speak on CA bladder and CA prostate. One thing which I would like to say is that CA bladder definitely is a occupational hazard cancer, which used to be, and is still, there are a lot of factors which are associated with CA bladder. And in North, CA bladder is very common, especially in the youngsters. Also, you see CA bladder a lot. While in South or other parts of the world, it's elderly patients who come with CA bladder. And as you see that this is the slide where you can see that in epidemiology, the male are suffer 4 times higher than the female, and it is the 8th most common cancer in men. But in our hospital, which is cancer is a exclusive cancer center, we have it's on 4th place. Maybe because we are a referral center, but otherwise it's the 8th most common cancer in the men if you see worldwide, and the minimum, the mean age is 65 years. The risk factor, which Sandeep has already told you, that chemical occupational exposure, definitely this is one thing, but there is smokers, they have 3 times more common is cancer of bladder than the non-smoker, and this is the one which is avoidable. You can see that 50% of the cases of bladder cancer, they're related with smoking. Then there is arsenic in water, then the chronic bladder inflammation, like with the stone or any other cystitis cystica or anything. There are some other factor which actually can be associated with C bladder is ionizing radiation, cyclophosphamide, schistosomiasis, which causes typically squamous cell carcinoma bladder and very common in Egypt. And bladder stone also will cause the squamous cell carcinoma of the bladder rather than the usual urothelial, we call it TCC. Another thing which I have seen, the young guys coming with CA bladder, I have seen even a 20 years old female and 20 years old male also. They come with a small bladder tumor. Most of the time, luckily, they have a early cancer disease. And these, I have asked them particularly. So many of them, they have they are coloring their hair. So they have a lot of chemicals. We don't even know what chemicals they are using. So that may be a one factor in the patients who have CA bladder. The clinical presentation, as you know, is the commonest is blood in urine, and one should always suspect CA bladder if somebody is having painless gross hematuria. He has to have ultrasound and cystoscopy before he leaves your clinic and you write him off. He may be having kidney tumor, he may be, most of the time they have a bladder tumor. Abdominal pain can occur in advanced stage when the hydronephrosis is there, or lower back pain when there is bone metastasis. But there is another important symptom is in the elderly patient who have bladder irritation, like they have got frequency, urgency, urgent continence, and you see there is nothing. It may not be even a bladder tumor on the ultrasound, but when you scope them, there is a flat growth, which is muscle invasive. So these are the things which one has to see when you see these patients in your clinic. Primarily, you are the guys who will see the patients. They come to us after once you have seen and you refer them to us. The primary investigation for any patient who has got bladder symptom or hematuria is bladder ultrasound, and on ultrasound you can easily see the bladder mass. There you can see the kidney also. You can, if the hydronephrosis is there, you can suspect something wrong down in the bladder area, maybe prostate or the bladder, and very rarely ascites. But on ultrasound that is visible, but you don't see ascites in CA bladder unless they are very late. If creat is normal, you must do CT scan and CT urography. You will see the bladder mass. This is one investigation now is done before we embark on doing the TURBT. TURBT is must in these patients. There is no point in doing cystoscopy and doing a small biopsy. When you do TURBT, you know that you are removing whole of the tumor. That's a therapeutic, and then you are removing the muscle. That's a staging TURBT also. It will tell you that it is muscle invasive or non-muscle invasive. These are the two types of variety of bladder cancer nowadays. In pathology, you can see this is the bladder where the mucosa is there, then there's the lamina propria, then muscle is there, ureters are there, then perivesical fat and urethra is there. One has to give you all the information about whether the tumor is just confined to the mucosa, or it is going to lamina propria, or is it going to the muscularis propria. Also, one can say the perivesical fat. Is there any, on imaging, you can see the hydronephrosis, but in pathology, mainly three things: mucosa, lamina propria, and muscle. So as I told you that nowadays we describe them non-muscle invasive and muscle invasive. There is the 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 nomenclature which used to be superficial and deep muscle, deep CA bladder is gone. It's a misnomer nowadays. You call them non-muscle invasive. It can be low grade, high grade. Muscle invasive has to be high grade. So this is how we describe nowadays the CA bladder. So what happens is the histological type of bladder is a transitional cell carcinoma is the most common. We call it urothelial also. And there are other varieties like micropapillary variant, adenocarcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, which are again very aggressive type of tumor. Managing the non-muscle invasive bladder cancer first is the based on histopathology. You can divide them TIS. CIS is tumor in situ, carcinoma in situ is the very aggressive cancer in bladder. If you see CIS on tongue or CIS on cervix, they are very indolent early cancer. But in prostate, this is a very aggressive, very bad cancer if you see the TIS. TA is non-invasive papillary urothelial carcinoma, just confined to the mucosa, not going to the lamina propria. And T1 is tumor invading the lamina propria. This is how described in non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. And to manage the non-muscle invasive cancer, you have to, the aim is to prevent the recurrence of the disease, because it comes back. If you remove and leave the patient like this, it will come back, and prevent the progression to the muscle invasive. If you don't treat them, they will go to the muscle. And once there goes to the muscle, it goes to everywhere in the body. So that is why treatment of muscle invasive bladder cancer is cystectomy. So there is another thing which you should know, why many times the surgeon or urologist who are doing dealing such patient, they advise re-TURBT. When the patient has come with a high grade tumor with T1 disease, even the re-TURBT is indicated, because 20 to 40% of these patients may be having the muscle invasive disease. And the classical indication for re-TURBT are incomplete resection at the first TURBT. If the muscle is not included in the specimen, you have to do re-TURBT. And even if it is the muscle is there, then also it is recommended, because also at that time also you can see the upgradation in the staging. At any cost, you should not miss the muscle invasive bladder disease. The non-muscle invasive bladder cancer, they can be divided into the low risk tumor like primary, solitary, small tumor, TA, or confined to the mucosa, grade 1 less than 3 centimeters, no CIS. This is the low risk tumor. Then there are high risk tumor, T1, grade 3, CIS, multiple recurrent large 3 centimeter tumor, TA, G1, G2 tumor. So they all are high grade. In between them is the intermediate risk. That mainly is TAG3, like mucosa with high grade. Mucosal tumor only confined to the mucosa with high grade. Then there is subgroup of the highest risk. These are the tumor, these are the patient who requires early cystectomy. Sometimes one can say this is the over treatment for such cases, but they do best with the early cystectomy. And this subgroup has lamina propria invasive grade 3 tumors associated with concurrent CIS, because they will progress to muscle invasive in 80%. Multiple and large T1G3 more than 3 centimeter, large multiple tumor, they will progress to muscle invasive. Recurrent T1G3, very high chances that it will progress to muscle invasive. T1G3 with CIS in prostatic urethra, because you can't treat prostatic urethra with BCG, and then the micropapillary variant of urothelial carcinoma. These all type of tumor will require the early cystectomy. So how do we treat low risk disease? We just do resection, nothing else, because risk of recurrence is 15%, risk of progression is 0.2%. That's a 1-year statistics. Just follow them with urine cytology and flexicystoscopy. If it recurs and again low grade, you can leave it. If it generally they don't recur. If they recur after maybe 2-3 years, you just leave them. If they recur early, then you treat them with mitomycin C weekly into 6 weeks. Intermediate risk, as I told you, they are between low risk and high risk. The risk of recurrence is 38%, risk of progression is 5%. Here you can give induction maintenance with metacycle chemotherapy. We prefer chemotherapy, mitomycin C, generally HIVEC, hyperthermic mitomycin C, or BCG also. When it was not there, BCG was also the treatment for this for 1 year. Follow up again with the urine cytology and flexi-cysto. High risk group, T1, high grade CIS, multiple recurrent large, as I told you. The recurrence rate is very high. Risk of recurrence is 61%. Risk of progression to the muscle invasive 17%. And here you give BCG. BCG is very effective in these patients, only that it may be having a lot of side effects also, especially in the elite group of the patient. If you see the patient who is from lower strata, lower socioeconomic strata, they tolerate BCG very well. Or you can do the early cystectomy, as I've told you. But if you're not doing cystectomy, then follow up with the urine cytology and flexi-cysto. So what are the intravesical chemotherapy agent which we can use? Is thiotepa is there, gemcitabine is very frequently used. Is a lot of data are supporting this. Epirubicin not much used. Mitomycin is definitely for low grade, and perarubicin is also there, but we have no experience with perarubicin. Definitely gemcitabine is a drug of choice in our place, and mitomycin C. We generally use mitomycin C for low grade. Now, immediate intravesical therapy. Another thing which is there in the management of these patients, once you do TURBT, immediately you give them an intravesical within 24 hours. And this actually reduces the risk by 12%. This is generally preferred to give in low risk NMIBC, and the best timing is 2 to 3 hours and can be given up to the first 24 hours. And when not to give is suspected high grade disease, that is muscle invasive, is better avoid. Deep resection, if you have gone through the bladder and there is a perivesical fat, extensive resection must avoid. In the presence of hematuria, you should avoid again. And this is what it does. The absolute reduction of recurrence is about 12%. It acts while destroying the circulating tumor cell in the bladder after TURBT, and thus prevents the reimplantation of the cancer cell. Now, intravesical BCG installation is done with the 80 to 120. In our practice, we are using now 80. Previously, we were using 120, but there were a lot of side effects. We have stopped using 120 milligram. We use 180 milligram weekly for 6 weeks. It is retained in the bladder for 1 to 2 hours. Recommended in intermediate and high risk group, as I've told you, after 2 weeks of the TURBT, 6 doses once weekly, then 1 monthly for 1 year. If you don't give maintenance doses, these patients, they fail. But when not to given, never given immediately after TURBT, patient will have BCG septicemia. In presence of hematuria, never ever give. In presence of UTI, is better to avoid. Incontinent patient, because it will not be retained in the bladder. Evidence in favor of BCGR, it has got an immunotherapy effect. It activates host immunity against the cancer cell in the bladder locally, not systemically. It reduces the absolute reduction of the recurrence 14%. Reduction on the odds of progression is 27%. Is the only agent that reduces both recurrence and progression of the NMIBC2 muscle invasive bladder cancer. Watch out the BCG side effects. It's not an innocent treatment. It can kill even. If the BCG sepsis is there, it can kill. There can be disseminated BCG infection, fever, pain, hematuria, cystitis, bladder fibrosis, small capacity bladder, so that the even patient lands up with cystectomy and neobladder or conduit. Recently, I have done this, and before also I have done many. Evolving alternative treatment is HIVEC, hyperthermic intravesical chemotherapy. We prefer to give in the patients who cannot tolerate BCG or the patient who have intermediate high risk group. These are the patient, then intermediate group, risk group of the patient where we give this treatment. Now if the muscle invasive disease is there, you have to have metastatic workup. It can be done by the CT chest or abdomen, but nowadays we are doing FDG PET scan. This is one-stop shop. You do the FDG PET scan, whole of the body you can see and you can know, and this is very sensitive in muscle invasive bladder cancer. And the treatment for muscle invasive bladder cancer, if the patient is fit, he should have cystectomy. In male, you have to remove bladder and prostate. In female, you have to remove uterus, bladder, and the ovaries, depending on the diversion. If they want the diversion as a neobladder, then you may not have to remove the urethra and the antevaginal wall. Nowadays, we are even saving the uterus because the bladder can rest on the uterus and they can wide. But if you classically, we have to do anti-excitation where we remove the uterus, antevaginal wall, bladder, ovaries, and the lymphadenectomy is done. Urinary diversion, just to enumerate, is the ileal conduit is the most common urinary diversion in any setup, because this is time tested and it has hardly any side effects. So, and this lasts for whole life. Other type of the urinary diversion, orthotopic neobladder. Then this is the neobladder which we designed in 2005, and we published our early result in 2006. Recently, we have given 12 years results in around 300 patients where we have done this diversion. The patient, they do very well with this urinary diversion neobladder. We call it as pitcher spot ileal neobladder. This was published in 2006 in Japanese Journal of Clinical Oncology. Radical cystectomy can be offered to the patients who are above 80. This is our paper which got published in 2012. And we are routinely doing cystectomy above 80. My patients who had the maximum age was 106. He was from Hills and he did very well. The another thing which we published in 2008 was mini lap cystoprostatectomy. This was first done in the world in our center, which we published, and we got a letter in 2010 by a surgeon from Denmark, who actually, after seeing our article, he also started doing this surgery. Robotic assisted radical prostatectomy is now a very common operation in our center. Most of the patients, they have robot assisted surgery. The advantage are smaller incision, minimal invasive, faster post-op recovery, less pain, less blood loss. Patient goes home early. You can see how nice view of robotic radical cystectomy is. The lymphadenectomy is done very nicely, and then you can cut the urethra with the adequate length, and you can put the new bladder on this. Then metastatic bladder cancer treatment mainly is chemotherapy, and in chemotherapy one can use gemcitabine cisplatin or dense dose MVAC. Previously MVAC was the regime which was used to be very toxic, and then medical oncologists, they switch over to gemcitabine and cisplatin. Now they have come back to dense dose MVAC, where they give high dose of MVAC 2 weekly, but it's supported with a lot of other growth stimulating factor and erythropoietin and all, so that patient does not have much side effects, and it gives very good results as they claim. The new thing in horizon in medical oncology in CA bladder is immunotherapy, and there's pembrolizumab, atezolizumab, and they are a PD-L1 inhibitor, and they have been tried in all cancer, and so they are in the bladder, CA bladder also. They have better efficacy profile than the chemotherapy and they have less side effects. Only problem is that at the moment they are very costly agents. Radiotherapy in bladder, one has to know about what the radiotherapy has, what role the radiotherapy has. It can be offered as a part of triple modality treatment when you want to save the bladder. And in this thing, patient has to be very highly motivated if he wants to save his bladder. It can only be done in very selective patient who had tumor less than 3 centimeter, the tumor which has been completely resected with no hydronephrosis, no lymph node, and no perivesical extension. Any one of them is there, patient will not respond to this treatment. He will have recurrence. Patient has to receive chemotherapy and radiotherapy both, and he should agree for a strict follow-up because anytime the recurrence is there or suboptimal response is there, patient has to have radical cystoprostatectomy. Otherwise, it will compromise the outcome. So for this, my take-home message is always investigate gross hematuria to find out underlying bladder cancer. Smoking is most important modifiable risk factor. Bladder cancer is curable. TURBT is the most important in staging and management tool. Radical cystectomy with chemotherapy offers best chance for cure, even in the elderly patient, and radiation as a part of triple modality for highly selective patient can be offered if the patient is highly motivated and he agrees that he will come for follow-up, and he will accept cystectomy if he does not respond completely. So this is the end of my first talk. I'll go for next talk. Sandeep, shall I go for next talk also immediately?
Yes, sure, sir.
Okay. So prostate cancer, if you see, it is the most common cancer in men, not in India. India, it is coming on now second in our hospital, but world over is the commonest, most common cancer. And the reason why most common is because the practice of screening. We do not do the screening, but we do have part of a health checkup or the voluntary screening, as Sandeep has already told. But then 1 in 9 patient men will suffer from the prostate cancer. Average age is 66 years at the diagnosis, but that doesn't mean the younger patient cannot have the cancer. They can have. There are risk factors which are modifiable and non-modifiable. Non-modifiable is age. As you grow, the cancer prostate increases. African ethnicity. African have more aggressive prostate cancer. This more common. Inherited, their genetic factor and the family history. If the father has prostate cancer, then his brother will be at very high risk, around 7-8 times, and the son will be at high risk. So they should be, having checkup with PSA early than the normal population. Modifiable risk are smoking, diet rich in oil, and red meat. Clinical presentation are same as of BPH, poor stream, intermittent stream, sense of incomplete bladder emptying, urgency, and retention of urine can occur. Any voiding symptom in a patient who is above 50 years, he should have his PSA done before they go for any other checkup, because they may be having cancer, but then the commonest is BPH. Blood in urine, very rarely. It's not a very common symptom in prostate cancer, but it can occur. Non-specific bony pain. This used to be the commonest presentation in 80s when the patient will have bony metastasis. New onset of paraparesis. They can have paraparesis. We don't see it, but I have seen in early days of my practice, and pathological fracture also we have seen in the patient. Many times they complain of backache and they are going to orthopedician. Orthopedician will not do DRE. DRE is distal rectum examination, and finally they land up with somehow with the urinary symptom to the urologist. As soon as he does DRE, you can feel the prostate hard nodular fix. So any patient who is coming with backache, elderly, you must do DRE in him. The clinical presentation, if you see the complete asymptomatic diagnosis on screening, that's the commonest presentation in West. We have in our corporate checkup or a health checkup as you guys are having. Otherwise, patient come to us for a voluntary screening program. So in that we do not recommend mass screening in this country. The reason is that in that if you do the mass screening, a lot of patients they actually discovered in a very indolent phase and they get over treated. This can be done with a simple blood test. Normal value is less than 4, that is PSA. Cancer can still be present even the PSA is 4, less than 4. And that is the time, in those cases, we see the PSA velocity. If it at 1 year it is 2.5, in a patient who is 45 or 50, you have to do PSA next year. If it is 2.8 or 2.9 or 3, it's better to do investigate such patients. I'll tell you what investigation you can do. If the PSA is more than 10 nanogram, there's a high risk of having cancer, and they definitely should be having other investigation. But you can also have high PSA in patients who have got prostatitis, which is very common in our country, BPH, and if done during the retention of urine, the PSA can be high. And patient PSA can be low also if the patient is on dutasteride. The patient can be having 4 nanogram PSA on dutasteride, but actually that means his PSA is 8. It just reduces the PSA to the half. DRE per rectal examination is must. You must feel the prostate, and in that you can see the bulge of the prostate into the rectum, length of the prostate. Consistency is the main thing. Soft benign nodular or hard nodular is malignant. Involvement of rectal mucosa that we do for our purpose. When we take any patient for even radical prostatectomy, we do good DRE, so we can know that this patient is operable or not. We can see the lateral sulcus, we can feel the rectal mucosa. If they are free, lateral sulcus are free, these are the patient can be operated safely. Now evaluation is by ultrasound. This gives you the size and ecotexture of the prostate. Cannot diagnose prostate definitely. Pre-void and post-void residual urine can give you the idea of obstruction, status of the kidney. Sometimes patient can have hydronephrosis. The further evaluation is done. If the PS is more than 10, then do an abnormal DRE. You can do transrectal ultrasound guided biopsy, and it is very easily doable by any urologist. It is done in the clinic as outpatient. Like here, you can see that you can do 3, 3, 6, and 6, 12 core biopsy. If you feel a nodule is there, if you can see the nodule like this, you can hit it separately like here. TRUS is very important investigation. Further evaluation, the PS is 4 to 10 nanogram, ml or more than 10, and the normal DRE examination. If non-palpable disease, the patient can have such situation, even if the PSA more than 10 or less than 4 or 4 to 10, there is no non-palpable DRE, there is no abnormality on DRE, you must get multiparametric MRI, which actually will tell you what are the pyrates scoring on the MRI, and that gives you a lot of idea about if the patient is having prostate cancer or not. And if the pyrates is more than 3, you better do MRI TRUS fusion biopsy. This facility is available in few centers in India. We are the one among those 2-3 centers in India. We do MRI TRUS fusion biopsy in our hospital. You can see the multiparametric MRI images. You can interpret it yourself. You can see this lesion. This is the median lobe. This is not the cancer, but this is very suspicious. So you can just hit this area and do the biopsy. You can use superimpose MRI image on ultrasound, and you can hit the area, target area. We call it area of interest. There's a high risk area, region of interest, ROI. How do you further investigate metastatic worker? There used to be bone scan, which was very common, but then things have changed now. A PSMA PET scan. This is a prostate-specific membrane antigen. PSMA gene was very weak gene. I did my fellowship in postdoc in 2000 in America. At that time, this gene was there, but nobody was talking. Suddenly, when the PET scan came, they tagged the technetium, their nucleotide with PSMA, and it became very specific to the prostate cancer. It can show you the lymph node, it can show you the soft tissue metastasis, it can tell you the everywhere where the prostate cancer is. So it is a one-stop shop for prostate cancer, as is the FDG PET. Pathology depends on the Gleason's pattern, and Gleason's pattern, many of you will be knowing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the undifferentiation in the cell size. And now recently they have changed some in the classification in pathology. They have developed the grade group if the Gleason's is less than 6. If grade group 2 is the Gleason's is 3+4, they are intermediate favorable. Then grade group 3, there's a Gleason's score is 4+3, where the 4 is predominantly, 3 is less, is unfavorable. Then high and very high Gleason's group, Gleason's 8 and 9 and 10, there's a grade group 4 and 5. Now, if you see the biopsy report, they come with this. And this is the reason for them. Now you can define them better rather than giving them other scoring and telling them that well differentiated, intermediate, and poor risk. Treatment is for especially patients who have Gleason's 3+3, PSA less than 10. The option is active surveillance. This avoids surgery advantages. This avoids surgery related complication like sexual and continence, and it gives you the very good quality of life. But the radical prostatectomy is another treatment option for such patient, and which gives the most accurate pathological staging. In 20 to 30 patients, there may not be a 3+3, there may be 3+4 or 4+4. It gives the most accurate follow-up and provides the chances of cure, very high chances of cure. Disadvantage in active surveillance is the patient remains anxious that disease is there, and when he actually sometimes feel that this may spread anytime. Extensive follow-up with DRE, PSA, MRI, prostate biopsy is required. And if you're keeping him on active surveillance, you may have to do biopsy. Again, you have to do MRI and PSA. The disadvantage of radical prostatectomy is temporary effects on the continence and sexual function for the patient. He may be incontinent, he may be lose his sexual function temporarily. And if you go for intermediate risk group, that is the Gleason's 3+4, 4+3, PSA 10 to 20. Again, radical prostatectomy or radiation with ADT. There is no role of active surveillance in this group. Advantage of radical prostatectomy is will give most accurate pathological staging, most accurate follow-up, and provides chances of cure and best survival result. While advantage of radiation with ADT is it avoids surgery, which a lot of people are scared in our country. Sexual and functional infects are less. They're a bit better than surgery. They probably do not lose as much sexual and function status as the surgery is done, which is recoverable. Disadvantage of surgery is temporary effects on the continence and sexual function, while disadvantage of radiation and ADT are a lot. There is serious side effects of radiation, cystitis, proctitis, erectile dysfunction, urethral stricture. Prostate remains in situ. If you require TURP for such patient, he will be incontinent. And 18% of these patients will require some surgical intervention. There is no accurate pathological staging because you don't remove the prostate. Follow-up is difficult and not accurate, as PSA does not necessarily become undetectable. And when you are giving ADT has its own side effects on the heart and other things. ADT-related side effects are there. There is a andropause, there is a muscle loss, there is a bone loss with ADT. And surgery in post-radiation is horrific, as I told you. High-risk patient, they are definitely treated with multimodality treatment. They may require surgery, radiation, hormone therapy, all, or maybe sometimes chemotherapy also. Radical prostatectomy, I'll talk about radical prostatectomy because I am uro-oncologist. It's a minimally invasive robotic technique, has revolutionized the robotic surgery. I used to do open a lot, but in 2011 February we got the robot, and most of our radical prostatectomy are nowadays with the robot. The robot gives a smaller incision, easier to operate in a small space. But I used to do very good open surgery also. But the radical robotic does have advantage of doing a very good meticulous anastomosis and lesser blood loss, and nerve sparing is better because magnification, 3D vision, better dexterity, and there's no tremor. So this has changed the scene in radical prostatectomy completely. Laparoscopic radical prostatectomy could not be picked up by many surgeons because of the complexity of the operation and the poor outcome. You can see this is the rectovesical pouch, and we do the ridges sparing radical prostatectomy maximum in this country. Regularly this is done here, and it gives the best continent result. Now, what about metastatic carcinoma? Mainly treatment is hormone therapy, that is androgen deprivation. You have to deplete the testosterone either by surgically or by the medically. You can remove the testes, or you can give the medical castration by LHR analog or LHRH antagonist. Everything is effective. Antagonists have some advantage of having a good cardiac side effect profile. And the patient has got cardiac issue, then better to switch over to antagonist. What must know about effects of castration? Surgical castration is permanent, it is irreversible. So it should be done in the patient who has got high volume metastatic disease. It is better to do surgical castration rather than doing the medical castration. Do not offer surgical castration in non-metastatic or low metastatic burden disease, because there the role of intermittent hormone therapy comes, where the quality of life is better. Chemical castration is reversible. Effects are equivalent to the surgical castration. They are same and can be offered to the patient with locally advanced disease or metastatic disease as part of multimodality treatment. So this gives the extra advantage of whenever you want, you can stop, and whenever you want, you can start. In metastatic cancer prostate, the other thing is that you have to give LHRH antagonist or agonist or orchiectomy lifelong. But then they may land with chemotherapy, and there are multiple agents after in these patients when they have metastatic disease: chemotherapy, abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide, darolutamide. These are the now used in place of flutamide and bicalutamide. Bicalutamide, flutamide are no more the treatment of choice in this setting when they come primarily as metastatic disease with you after orchiectomy or LHRH analog or antagonist. They have to have either chemotherapy or abiraterone or enzalutamide. These three are available in India. Apalutamide, darolutamide are not available in India. We will be having soon the trial of darolutamide in our hospital. You can divide metastatic disease in three. HSPC is hormone-sensitive prostate cancer. They are naive patient. Non-metastatic CRPC, sorry, not HSPC, CRPC and CRPC. CRPC is castrate-resistant prostate cancer. When they have failed hormone therapy, then they become CRPC, and in that non-metastatic is a separate variety. And the multiple agents are there to treat them. Second line hormone therapy, like I have told you, apalutamide, darolutamide, enzalutamide, they are hormone therapy only. One can use even Hornven, one can use even estomastine. Then there is a chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is two. There is a taxotere and there is a cabazitaxel. There are two types of chemotherapy which can be given one by one. Abiraterone, enzalutamide, also the treatment for CRPC, also in HSPC. Then the treatment is PSMA lutetium, which is radioactive nucleotides like strontium used to be there in past. Now PSMA lutetium has the advantage that it goes to soft tissue, lymph node, everywhere. And PSMA actinium is more stronger than the PSA lutetium. But the problem with actinium is that it will lead to the xerostomia. It will go to salivary gland and patient will have dry mouth. That's very difficult to manage, but it is very effective. Rad-223 is another radioactive nucleotide. Nowadays, it's not rather available in India because it's very costly and it has never made an entry in country. If the patient has to have, he has to go to the Singapore. The problem is that it will only affect the bone. It will not affect the soft tissue as lutetium and actinium will do. Then there is a driver mutation therapy, like if the patient has got BRCA1 and BRCA2 positive, they can go for olaparib, which is available in India and it is used in many other cancer besides the prostate cancer. So after that, I will stop and I'm happy to take any question or any comment from all the audience. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, sir, for giving a broad overview of this bladder cancer and the prostate cancer. Because with the advancement of science, a lot of new like treatment opportunities are available now. Even immunotherapy and many investigation facilities are also available. So whatever patient they are being diagnosed as urinary bladder cancer or the prostatic cancer, so the treatment options which are available are many, and they should be tailor-made as per the disease stage and the and the patient choice also, because like for prosthetic cancer, they are being offered like they can go for radical prostatectomy or laparoscopic or the robotic, but now we are more like knowledgeable that robotic prostatectomy is much better because of the many advantages over the normal prostatectomy, radical prostatectomy or the laparoscopic. And even for the doctor also, for the operating surgeon also, robotic surgery is much advantageable.
Yeah.
So there are many renowned panelists with us, sir. First, we'll start with Dr. Gajendra Kumar, sir. Dr. Gajendra Kumar is our president, and he is a medical director in railway. Dr. Gajendra Kumar, sir.
First of all, I would like to compliment Dr. Sudhir Raval for a beautiful presentation. And he has made two such difficult topics very, very simple to understand by one and all. So my compliments, sir. Now my question is, invariably we subject our patients for this PSA test, which is a very routine test, especially in elderly. And we ask them for total PSA and free PSA. Can you further elucidate how to, go about it going about the readings of these two tests?
Sir, you have to unmute yourself, sir.
I'm not able to. Yeah, now it is okay. Yeah, I was doing, but it was not happening. Now it's okay. Thank you, Dr. Gajendra, for a nice question. Total PSA and free PSA has role in diagnosing of the prostate cancer, not in the follow-up. In follow-up, it is the total PSA only. So if the patient has got symptom, you need to do the PSA for him. And now mainly we rely on PSA velocity. If the PSA less than 4, but if you have the facility to do the free PSA, you must do it, because the ratio of free and total PSA can guide you the patient has got any cancer or not. It will guide you. It will not say that patient has got cancer. Now these patients where you suspect like free and total PSA ratio is more than 21, you must do MP-MRI. MP-MRI is multiparametric MRI, which uses 4 parameters of diffusion, weighted, spectrometry, and choline peak and other thing. So that will give you the exact situation, actually is place where the cancer can be. It's very specific. So this is the role of free and total PSA.
And one more small question. How we stand with the PR ultrasound vis-a-vis normal ultrasound?
No, transrectal ultrasound is definitely better for prostate. And it is very good when you use the fusion biopsy. Fusion biopsy, you take the MRI images of MP-MRI, they are put in a machine, they are extracted from that machine, and then you fuse with the transrectal ultrasound. So even if the patient has got normal prostate on examination, but the transrectal ultrasound, you see any hypoechoic lesion or the where the echogenicity is different, that actually you can hit also. So through that you can do the biopsy.
Thank you.
Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, sir. Dr. Rajiv is our senior vice president. So you have to unmute yourself.
Dr. Raval, I must congratulate you on an excellent presentation. Within 1 hour, such a difficult topic for men, especially bladder cancer and prostate in one go in 1 hour is a miracle, and you covered it all. Congratulations once again. My question, there are 2 questions. One is regarding cancer bladder and its epidemiology. As you know, you mentioned that occupational and environmental factors play a big role in genesis of bladder cancer. In India, a large belt in our country has got arsenic, which is very high in the groundwater. Second, occupational exposure occurs at a very early age and it's very prolonged. But actually, the diagnosis of cancer bladder occurs at the age, say, 65, 70, 75 years, when when the person is out of the job. So commonly what happens in a clinical setup, like the person lands up in Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Hospital, uh, the linkage between the job and the causation of cancer bladder does not happen in India because of the gap between the job, the exposure, and actual occurrence of cancer in India. Now, what has been your experience? Has there been any linkage between occupational and environmental exposure and occurrence of bladder cancer in India? So this is my first question. Second question relates to cancer prostate. Now, cancer prostate, I don't know why it is not number one. Still, all the cancer registries do not report anywhere in the country as CA prostate being number one for men. While in other countries, it is and it continues to remain for very long years as number one cancer for men. What could be the reason for this? Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Rajiv, I think I'll answer your second question first. There's a very simple reason for not having prostate cancer. Number one is we do not practice the screening. The incidence of and stage of the presentation, I'm telling incidence and the stage of presentation of prostate cancer in any country depends on the practice of screening.
Right.
But there is a problem with the screening also. What happens with the screening? You'll end up in diagnosing a lot of low-grade cancer, which finally end up with the radical treatment, either radical prostatectomy or radical radiotherapy or HIFU or something. So this leads to very bad over-treatment. In America, if you see, they were a 40-year-old man, they used to do radical prostatectomy and he will be incontinent.
Yes.
One of my friend wrote an article, Jed Mole, on this, that are we over-treating prostate cancer? And we learned soon in India, we never actually recommended mass screening in India. So few people tried, but then a lot of people, they just said no, because there's no point in unnecessary hunting prostate cancer and treating. If you do the mass screening, India will be having number one prostate cancer in the prostate cancer registry.
Right.
So this is the reason why it's on second in Rajiv Gandhi. In Delhi Cancer Registry is second now. That too because we are just screening, just doing PSA in the patients who have got symptom or they have family history.
Okay.
Now, your first question was about CA bladder and occupation related. I have seen many patients coming with CA bladder who have history of smoking. That's very common. Secondly, I have seen many patients who have actually working in an environment where the paint and all, they all inhale
Yes.
the chemicals. But I've seen few young people, young boys who have
Mhm.
bladder cancer, and it's not very rare. Every
Okay.
2-3 months, I get one young boy or young girl having CA bladder. I could not find any reason except few of them were using the hair color dye.
Oh, rare. Okay. That is surprising.
Yeah.
That means regulation of hair dyes is an urgent matter as a policy.
I think so. One should look into this matter.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Shiva, sir, Dr. Shiva is our ex-president of IUH from Mumbai, sir. Dr. Shiva Ramakrishnan, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Sudhir, excellent presentation. Now you just mentioned about radical, that is robotic prostatectomy. I was discussing with one of the oncologists from USA. In USA, they use radical robotic prostatectomy as a last resort. they have stopped using it so frequently. But in our country, if a patient is diagnosed as prostate cancer, the first choice given is radical robotic surgery. Do you agree with that?
No, I think your information is wrong. For organ-confined disease in USA, the most common treatment is robotic radical prostatectomy. As far as other approach to radical prostatectomy is concerned, they are only 0.5, like laparoscopic radical prostatectomy or open radical prostatectomy, only 0.5% of the patient will end up. Rest of them, they will end up with the robotic. But this is the most common treatment which is given to the patients who have got organ-confined CA prostate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Manu Saxena, sir. Dr. Manu Saxena is our ex-president of IUS Delhi branch, and he has been medical head of the BHEL earlier. Now he is superannuated. And Dr. Manu.
Yeah, Dr. Rawal, heartiest congratulations for a very good presentation, very
Thank you, sir.
clear and very precise. I have something to share that my father, he died of prostatic cancer. He had metastasized to all his bones and everything. And like you rightly said, no screening was in place. So his first symptom was very vague pain in the bones, which all the orthopedicians, they were not able to. Anyway, so since I'm his son, so, and you said that there is a hereditary issue also.
Have you done your PSA, sir?
Yes, sir, yes.
Good.
That is what I just wanted to ask you. So
Yeah.
now here is my question.
Yeah.
That if someone has BHP, PSA is less than 4. So, and there is a history that the father has expired of prostatic cancer. So is it all right, or I mean, as such, the BHP is not an indication of progressing to cancer? I hope you've understood the question.
Yeah, I understood. See, I told you also that PSA less than 4 doesn't mean that patient cannot have cancer.
Yeah, I heard that with
Yeah.
great concern. So I'm seeking clarification for that.
So I'll tell you, if it depends on the age. If a 50-year-old male whose family history is there and his PSA is 0.8 or 0.4,
Okay,
this patient should have his PSA after 5 years.
okay.
If suppose same patient who's got family history, he's again 50-year-old and his PSA is 2 or 2.4, he should repeat his PSA every year.
Sir, I am 62 and my PSA is 2.4.
Yeah. So
That is-
this makes things easy. At 62, 2.4 is fine. I'll not put you on that you have got cancer prostate. But
Okay.
then you have to keep a watch. You must repeat your PSA every year. If
But
the
only thing
PSA
is the
is,
family history is positive, sir.
yeah, just because of this thing. If there was no family history, I would have asked you to repeat PSA after 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
If you ask me, my PSA was 0.877. So then I have hardly any risk of having CA prostate at the age when I'm 57 now, 57, 58. So this is how it works. So 2.4, no cancer, but then you repeat PSA every year.
Mm.
The PSA is rising, do MP-MRI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saxena, sir. Dr. Vivek Chand Rao, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao is from Hyderabad, sir. He is our past president. Yeah.
Good evening, Dr. Sandeep. Sir, Dr. Rahul, sir, thank you very much for covering both bladder and prostate in 1 hour as a rapid fire session. And sir, it is more scaring now for us, we occupational health physicians, we are involved in prevention and screening. When you say that less than 4, it could be, prostate cancer and also non-palpable tumor also.
Yes.
So how frequently you see them, sir? That's number 1. Number 2, in a BPH case, every year, if the weight of the prostate keeps on increasing, but the PSA is less than 4, at any stage, do you recommend surgery, sir, or how to manage it?
Okay. So your first question was, say that again, first question.
Sir, I mean, how frequently you see
You see.
people with PSA less than 4 and also
And prostate
non-palpable
cancer.
tumor?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
See, if the patient has got non-palpable CA prostate, they are curable. One thing is this. And in our practice, when I started in 96, the organ confined disease was less than 5%. Now we have 30% of the patients who are actually having organ confined disease or locally advanced disease. 40% of these patients who are organ confined or locally advanced disease. 60% are the patients who have intermediate type where we can have the palpable disease. But around 10 to 15% of the patient now, what we see is non-palpable early disease, which is organ confined PSA less than 4. This is how the stats is nowadays. But it is, the chunk of patient having organ confined disease is increasing day by day, as you know, that health checkup and the patient's awareness and the availability of PSA, the patients coming with early disease are increasing. Second, you said BPH, if the size is increasing, so does that mean the PSA less than 4?
Yeah.
So does that mean the patient has got prostate cancer? I'll see the PSA value every year also. If the size per se doesn't matter at all. PSA is suppose staying at 2 every year, so he has not got cancer. No way he has got cancer. Rather, if the big size prostate PSA even more than 4 will indicate that there is no cancer. Because the bigger the size of the prostate, PSA has to be high in a non-cancerous, in a BPH. So large prostate with PSA 5, 6, they don't have cancer. They do not have cancer. So this is how it is. But then always you have to see if the PSA value is higher according to the age. I told you with Dr. Saxena also. So
Yeah.
at that is the main criteria. And then you do MPMRI. That will show you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more, sir. I mean, we are all non-specialists. Could you please elaborate on 3+3, 3+4, 5+5?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. 3+3 is a group grade 1. There's a type of benign cancer. People say that 3+3 should not be treated. You can put them in active surveillance. But problem with 3+3 is that it may not be representing whole of the prostate gland. There may be a focus of 3.4, 3+4. So what happens is if you get 3+3 and if you get 1 or 2 core only, these patients can be put on active surveillance. Don't do anything, just follow them up. But then the patient has to be on close follow with PSA, MRI and all. 3+4 is a bit more aggressive than their frank cancer. 4+3 are more aggressive than 3+4, but then intermediate. 4+4 are the cancer, they are very highly aggressive. Mean 8, 9, 10. 4+4, 4+, 5+4, 5+5. This all 3 groups are very highly aggressive cancer and they metastasize early. Their PSMA PET or bone scan may be normal, but most of the time they already have gone anywhere else. So this is how it is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So any other panelists, if they have any question, they can unmute themselves and they can ask the question from Dr. Rawal. This is a great opportunity for us to have such a renowned faculty with us. Yeah, Dr. Tyagraj. Dr. Tyagraj, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I have a patient. He's a 62-year-old man. He's having a end-stage renal disease. His creatinine is around 3.6. Difficult to pass urine and frequent urination and incontinence also. So he has got a prostatic. This one is 7. Would like to subject him to surgery. And how we have to manage this case, sir?
Yeah, how old he is?
He's 62-year-old man.
62 years. Okay.
Is end-stage renal disease, a creatinine of 3.6, and the
PSA
frequent
is-
urination and incontinence is also there. Bedwetting is also there.
And PSA?
Is 7, sir.
7. Okay. And is he on dialysis or he's not on dialysis?
Yeah, he has 1 or 2 times. He's twice a week he's on dialysis, sir.
Okay. So I'll definitely do DRE on him, see if there is a nodule or something. If there is no nodule or even if it is there, then I'll do MP-MRI, that is multiparametric MRI, to see any lesion which has got pyrids scoring. Because you are saying he's on dialysis and all, and incontinence, I can't understand why he is incontinence. That has to be seen separately before you offer any treatment to him. Has he got overflow incontinence, or there's a, he just because of the urgent incontinence, any residual urine, uroflow rate. So everything has to be seen before you do that. And MP-MRI has to be done. If there is pyrite scoring less than 3, 1 or 2 with PSA 7, I would like to give him a course of antibiotic for 2 weeks and repeat his PSA. If PSA has come down, I'll not do anything. Because many times they can have prostatitis in our country. If the PSA is still there and the MP-MRI is showing something, then we can do target biopsy. Otherwise, we can do even trust-guided biopsy, because 7 PSA is not less. It has to be seen with a suspicious eyes. You have to rule out the cancer in this patient.
Thank you very much, sir. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Sir, I have one question, sir. Myself, Dr. Maruti, sir. Dr. Maruti.
Yeah.
As a generally for the annual medical examination, I'm working as occupational medicine specialist, sir. We are subjecting above 40-year-old males for all the males as a PSA as a mandatory. Is it really required at the age of 40, or do we need to postpone to after 50? One point, sir.
See, it is not required at the age of 40 in our country.
Yes, yes.
Generally, we recommend the PSA after 50. 50, I think it is doable, especially the patient has got urinary symptom. But if he has got family history, like if his father or brother is suffering from CA prostate, then 45 is the age when you should do PSA, 1 PSA. And if the PSA is less than 1, this patient should have next PSA after 5 years at 50 years. But if his PSA is 2, then he should have next PSA next year. So this is how you have to do these tests. 40 years is, I don't think they should be
So it
having.
means, specific recommendation has to be done, sir.
Yes.
And one more question, sir. Regarding this BPH, is there any difference between the urban population and rural population? Any
BPH?
difference? Yes, sir.
No, I don't know. I don't think, but the thing is that rural population will not bother for symptom. They continue with the symptoms. And nowadays in urban area, there are a lot of drugs are there for BPH. So what happens is that patient, they are very effective. So patient do not come for surgery. And most of these patients will come for surgery when the big prostate is there. So that is why the role of laser prostatectomy has come in a big way. Because TURP will not be able to, it's dangerous in a big prostate. So laser have very good role. Otherwise, rural or urban, I don't think. Maybe rural, the diet is different. So if you see all the disease are less in rural area because of the occupational and the dietary habits, they are better in rural area. Otherwise, there's no difference.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was an excellent presentation, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maruti.
Yeah. So I hope if there is any question from panelists, they can ask. Otherwise, we can just conclude because it's almost 1 hour, 15 minutes. So Dr. Sudhir Rawal sir, you have given a lot of insight about the medical management and the surgical management of these 2 important cancers, which are of great importance for us as industrial physicians during screening also, and even after retirement also, when our employees, they get retired, but they have to be the medical coverage from the industry. So we need to be aware of all these things when, like the symptoms which we need to be very particular about, like hematuria or low backache. Then if we catch them in the initial symptoms, or if they have a family history, then definitely we should work them out. And after workup, we can take advice from learned people like you who are working specifically in this particular field, so that they can get the right treatment at the right place. That is more important for us as industrial physicians, because a lot of treatment options are now available. Even the like immunotherapy and other therapies, they are now available, which are very costly, and they are not included in the medical policies of many of our corporates. So they have to be very specific, and even the robotic surgery was not allowed in many diseases, but now seeing the advantages, many of our public sector undertakings, they have allowed this robotic surgery in especially prostate cancers and lung cancers, which it is where it is much required. So Dr. Rawal sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, everyone.
For
And the
giving
best part is, sir, your topic is of concern to all of us.
Thank you, sir. So Sandeep has to be given the credit. I was just speaking on bladder only. He said, "Nahi sir, prostate bhi boliye."
Prostate is a must. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Rawal actually said he has agreed at a very short notice. That is great for him. Although he was very busy today, he had one more sessions with the Urological Society. So we actually changed his timing because we wanted to learn something from him. So thank you very much, Dr. Rawal sir. So
Thank you.
during
Thank
this
you,
COVID
Sandeep.
times, we are meeting virtually, but we'll definitely have a physical meeting and physical conference also. That will be in February after we get the vaccine and other things. So at least the healthcare workers will be getting the vaccine first. So we have designed a small certificates of for felicitations, sir. That will send you.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep.
So we are fortunate enough to have the medical director of Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute, who is our old senior and friend, to deliberate on this particular topic, and especially two topics on my request specifically, because I wanted to learn more about prostate cancer. So thank you, Dr. Rawal sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you.
Stay safe
Thank
in
you.
pandemic. Stay safe and
Thank you.
take care of
Thank you.
loved ones.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.